You think people learn your weaknesses by watching you fail. They don't. They learn them by watching what you do repeatedly. How quickly you explain yourself. How uncomfortable you become when someone disagrees. How often you apologize just to end tension. How easily you abandon your position when the room turns against you. You may think those are small reactions. They aren't. Every repeated reaction is information, and eventually, people stop wondering how you'll respond. They know. That's when you become easy to read, and once someone can predict you, they don't need to control you directly. They just need to create the conditions that make you control yourself. That's the part most people miss. You don't lose social power in one dramatic moment. You give it away through patterns. And there are 7 shifts that expose exactly how that happens. The first one is simple. Stop rushing to repair discomfort. Someone disagrees with you. The room goes quiet. Their tone changes, and suddenly you feel the urge to fix it. You explain, you soften, you add another sentence, then another. Not because your position changed, but because the silence made you uncomfortable. And that's the first lesson people learn about you. Pressure works. They may never consciously think, I'm going to use this against them. They don't need to. They simply notice that when tension appears, you move first. So stop repairing every uncomfortable moment. Say what you mean. Then let it sit. Let the disagreement exist. Let someone misunderstand you for a moment. Because if every silence makes you retreat, people eventually learn that silence is enough. The second shift is more dangerous. Stop needing approval before you trust your own judgment. You say what you think. Someone disagrees, and suddenly you're reconsidering everything. Not because they proved you wrong, because they made you uncomfortable. You change your wording, then your position, then eventually your opinion, just to restore agreement. And the problem isn't changing your mind. Changing your mind can be intelligence. The problem is changing it because disagreement feels like rejection. That's when approval becomes a remote control. Someone doesn't even have to argue with you. They just have to withdraw warmth, a shorter reply, a colder expression, a little distance, and suddenly you're adjusting yourself to get the approval back. That isn't independence. That's conditioning. So the next time someone disagrees with you, don't ask, do they still approve of me? Ask, did they actually change my reasoning? If the answer is no, you don't owe them a different opinion. The third shift is urgency. You become predictable when you feel like you have to respond immediately. A message arrives. You answer instantly. Someone demands an explanation. You give one. Someone throws an accusation at you. You defend yourself before you've even decided whether the accusation deserves an answer. And urgency creates a strange imbalance. The person who can make you respond immediately has already taken control of the pace. You are reacting to their timing, not yours. Someone provokes you. You fire back. Someone criticizes you. You defend yourself. Someone sends an emotional message. You write an emotional response. And now, you're no longer choosing your behavior. You're following theirs. So create a gap. Not to play games, not to make someone anxious. To think. Read the message. Put the phone down. Let the emotion pass. Then decide whether a response is even necessary. Because sometimes the strongest response isn't a better sentence. It's realizing you don't have to answer the question on the terms it was asked. You don't need to win the moment. You need to control your participation in it. The fourth shift is access. You give everyone the same version of yourself. the same information, the same emotional availability, the same explanations, the same opportunities to reach you, and you call that openness. But openness without boundaries isn't strength. It's unlimited access. And unlimited access teaches people that they don't have to earn proximity to you. They simply expect it. This doesn't mean becoming fake. It means understanding that trust should have levels. Some people get your time. Some get your opinions. Very few get your vulnerabilities. And fewer still get the parts of you that can actually be used against you. Selective access isn't cruelty. It's information. It tells people that closeness comes with responsibility. And when someone repeatedly mishandles that access, you don't need a dramatic confrontation. You reduce it, quietly. The fifth shift is one most people don't notice in themselves. Stop explaining yourself to people who already decided what they think. You say something, they misunderstand it, so you explain. They misunderstand again. You explain harder. You give context. You provide evidence. You tell the whole story. And somehow, you're still defending yourself. Why? Because being misunderstood feels unbearable. You want to control their perception of you. But you can't. And the harder you try, the more power you hand them. Because now their opinion determines how much you have to prove. Sometimes you don't need another explanation. You need the discipline to let someone be wrong about you. Not everyone deserves access to the full version of your reasoning. And not every misunderstanding is a problem you are responsible for fixing. Being temporarily misunderstood is sometimes the price of keeping your freedom. The sixth shift is where relationships quietly change. Stop carrying more of the interaction than the other person does. Look closely. Who is always explaining? Who apologizes first? Who keeps restarting the conversation? Who chases after distance? Who keeps trying to restore the relationship after every disagreement? Now ask yourself something uncomfortable. Are you carrying more of the relationship than the other person is? Because that's how silent hierarchies form. Nobody announces them. Nobody says, you matter less than I do. It happens through repetition. One person keeps adjusting. The other keeps receiving the adjustment. One person keeps apologizing. The other learns that they don't have to. One person keeps chasing. The other learns that distance creates pursuit. And eventually, the relationship has an invisible structure. You may still call it friendship. You may still call it love. You may still call it respect. But behavior has already established the hierarchy. That's why patterns matter more than labels. And then comes the seventh shift, the one that ties everything together. People learn you through consequences, not your promises, not your intentions, your consequences. Every time someone crosses a boundary and nothing happens, they learn something. Every time someone disrespects you and still receives the same access, they learn something. Every time you threaten to leave but never do, they learn something. Every time you say, never again, and then repeat the same response, they learn something. You are teaching people how to treat you, not with a speech, with repetition. And after enough repetitions, they don't need to test you anymore. They already know. They know what you tolerate. They know what makes you retreat. They know what gets you talking. They know what gets you apologizing. They know how much pressure you can handle before you surrender your position. That's when predictability becomes vulnerability. And this is where Machiavelli becomes relevant. Not because he wrote a modern guide to social dominance. He didn't. His political analysis focused on something much less comfortable. People respond to incentives, to appearances, to fear, to advantage, and to changing circumstances. One broader lesson follows from that. Don't build your position around what depends entirely on someone else's goodwill, because goodwill can change, circumstances can change, incentives can change, and when they do, behavior can change with them. So the goal isn't to become cold. It isn't to manipulate people before they manipulate you, and it certainly isn't to assume everyone has an agenda. That's paranoia. The goal is simpler. Become harder to move in the ways that matter, not because you're trying to confuse people, because you're no longer controlled by the same triggers. You don't automatically explain. You don't automatically apologize. You don't automatically chase. You don't automatically defend. You don't automatically surrender your position because someone became uncomfortable with it. You pause. You observe. Then you choose. And that changes the entire equation. Because once you stop reacting automatically, people lose access to the version of you they could control. So ask yourself one question. Not, who is trying to manipulate me? Ask, what have my repeated reactions taught people to expect from me? That question is harder, because the answer isn't always someone else's fault. Maybe you've taught people that your boundaries are negotiable. Maybe you've taught them that silence makes you panic. Maybe you've taught them that withdrawal makes you chase. Maybe you've taught them that a little disapproval is enough to make you abandon your position. And if you've taught them that, you can teach them something different. Not through threats, not through speeches, through changed behavior. Say less. React slower. Choose your battles. Protect your access. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. And most importantly, stop rewarding behavior you claim you don't accept. Because people don't only learn who you are from what you say. They learn who you are from what happens after they test you. And once your behavior becomes deliberate, you become much harder to read, much harder to pressure, and much harder to control. Not because you've learned how to control other people, because you finally stopped handing them the controls. But there's another question worth asking, because if people can learn your patterns and your patterns can become predictable, then what happens when the pattern they're learning isn't coming from them at all? What happens when the thing controlling your reactions is something you never realized was influencing you? You might want to think about that, because sometimes the people around you aren't the only ones learning how to move you. Sometimes you've been trained to move yourself.